In this video, we're going to be talking about absolute value equations. Okay, we can think of an absolute value of some given number as the distance that that number has from zero on the number line. Okay, so if we say we have the absolute value of 4, we know that 4 is 4 units away from 0. Okay, but if we have the absolute value of -4, we know that this is also 4 units away from 0. Okay, so the answer will always be positive. You can think of the absolute value sign as just a way to measure distance from the origin or from 0 on the number line. Okay, so we have a couple of rules we have to remember. So we have uh, given, well, let's move this down a little bit, and we'll say to solve an equation of the form of the form the absolute value of a equals b. We have two rules to remember. Okay, we have if b is greater than or equal to 0, then a equals b, or a equals negative b. Okay, so if a is greater than or equal to 0, then you have to consider both equations, a equals b or a equals negative b. You have to find a solution for each of those. Okay, the other rule is if b is strictly less than 0, then the absolute value of a equals b has no solution. And again, the reason for this is because we can think of the absolute value sign as a measure of distance. Okay, and there's no way that the distance of a from the origin has a negative distance. Okay, and this is kind of a concept that doesn't really make much sense, at least not in this context. Okay, so let's look at a few examples where we are going to try and work this out. Here we're given that the absolute value of 3x minus 6 is equal to 6. So here we have, since 6 is greater than or equal to 0, we have to consider 3x minus 6 equals 6, and we have to consider 3x minus 6 equals negative 6. Okay, so we're going to have two solutions possibly here. All right, so let's go ahead and solve this one. We can add 6 to both sides, and we'll get that 3x is equal to 12. We can divide by 3, and we get that x is equal to 4. Okay, that's one of our solutions. And if you want to check, you can. So if you wanted to do that, we could do that real quick. So we have the absolute value of 3 times 4 minus 6 should be, that would be the absolute value of 12 minus 6, which is the absolute value of 6, which is just 6. So this one works out. Okay, now let's do this one over here. 3x minus 6 equals negative 6. Here we can add 6 to both sides. This cancels, and now we have 3x is equal to 0. Okay, so since 3x is equal to 0, we can divide both sides by 3. 0 divided by 3 is 0, and we get x is equal to 0. Okay, and again, you can check, you can plug 0 in for x, and you'll see that the absolute value of 3 times 0 minus 6 is the absolute value of negative 6, which is just 6. Okay, so x equals 4 and x equals 0 are both valid solutions here. Now let's consider the absolute value of 6u plus 12 equals negative 6. All right, well, right away, we can go ahead and say this is going to have no solution. Don't have to do anything else with it. This is because you have an absolute value expression on the left-hand side set equal to some negative number. There's no way we can manipulate this to make this make sense. So we know right away there's no solution here. Let's take a look at this one. We have 5 times the absolute value of 4x equal to 60. Okay, and we can manipulate absolute value equations just like any other equation. We can do anything we want to both sides, or to one side, as long as we do it to the other. Okay, so here we can divide both sides by 5. Okay, and we'll have then that the absolute value of 4x is equal to 60 divided by 5, which is 12. So we have to consider then 4x is equal to 12, or 4x is equal to negative 12. All right, so let's solve each of these. We can divide both sides by 4 here, and we'll get x is equal to 3. All right, then over here, we can divide both sides by 4, and we get x is equal to negative 3. And again, you can plug each of these solutions in and see that you'll get this to make sense. Okay, now let's consider this one. We have here the absolute value of y minus 6, okay? Then we have plus 10 is equal to 10. All right, so here we can, like any other equation, we can manipulate by subtracting or adding from both sides. So let's take 10 away. And we'll end up with the absolute value of y minus 6 is equal to 0. Okay, and we could say we have to consider the absolute value. We could say we have to consider y minus 6 is equal to both positive 0 and negative 0. But since it's 0, there really isn't a positive or negative 0. So we really only have to consider y minus 6 equals 0. And we can add 6 to both sides. And we get y is equal to 6. So this one is one of the only times you'll actually only have one solution to an absolute value equation. Okay, let's look at number 5 here. We have negative 4 times the absolute value of v plus 6 equals negative 36. Now here you might be tempted to go ahead and say, well, there's no way we can make this work. We have it equal to a negative number. But look here, we have the absolute value of v plus 6 times negative 4. What happens if we divide both sides by negative 4? If we do that, this negative 4 will disappear, but then we'll have negative 36 divided by negative 4, and we'll get the absolute value of v plus 6 is equal to 9. So the initial equation we're given is equivalent to this equation, and this one is totally valid. So we have the absolute value of v plus 6 is equal to 9. So we have to consider both. We have to consider v plus 6 equals 9, or v plus 6 equals negative 9. Okay, so on this one, we can take 6 away from both sides, and we'll get v is equal to 3. Here we can take 6 away again, right? And we'll get v is equal to negative 15. Okay, and then one more. We have 4 times the absolute value of y plus 8 minus 9, and that's equal to negative 73. All right, so here let's go ahead and isolate the absolute value expression by itself. So let's add 9 to both sides. These will cancel. And we'll then have 4 times the absolute value of y plus 8 is equal to negative 64. All right, so now we can go ahead and divide both sides by 4. And we'll see that y plus 8 is equal to negative 64 divided by 4. It doesn't really matter what that is, other than we just say it is negative 16. But we know that it's negative, and that's all that really matters here. Okay, so we have y plus 8 is equal to negative 16. So there's no way we can make this make any sense. So we have to say there is no solution. Okay, so if there's anything you take away from this, it's in these initial couple rules that we laid out here. If b is if you have some absolute value equation of the form, the absolute value of a is equal to b. If b is greater than or equal to 0, then a is equal to b, or a is equal to negative b. You have to check for both of those. Or if you have b less than 0, then you're going to have no solution. And the other thing you should take away from this is that the absolute value you can think of as a distance from 0. That is how you can think of the absolute value sign. So hopefully that helps a little bit with your homework.